and welcome to the Retro Beats Podcast, episode 14. My name is Derek Alexander. Guess what? If you were new to this is not chiptune music, this is not video game remixes, this is not video game cover bands. We're talking original video game music because this is video game music appreciation. Also what that means. No nostalgia required. We're not just playing the stuff you know about, we're playing weird stuff like this request from Tyson, a little known Game Boy game called Metal Masters. That's how we're starting this off. from the misunderstood Nintendo game Bram Stoker's Dracula. That is an unused song, it turns out, from that terrible game with an interesting little soundtrack. I know the Angry Video Game Nerd and a couple other people have commented on how that's one of the worst soundtracks of all time, and it's definitely an interesting and weird soundtrack for the Nintendo. Like, a lot of that soundtrack is stuff you don't normally hear on a Nintendo game, and I think it's interesting, and definitely there's some solid tracks on it. I think it is far from the worst soundtrack on the Nintendo. Before that, we heard Treasure Master for the Nintendo, a request from Warren. Before that, Alien 3 for the Nintendo, a request from Dominique. And before that, Bucky O'Hare from the Cell level. That is a remaster that I worked pretty extensively on, and that's one that I will note that has a whole bunch of changes to the composition. Throughout this podcast, there's actually a handful of songs that feature kind of minor or sometimes major changes to the composition, and that's just me goofing around here in the studio, as it were. And that one in particular, I put a whole bunch of time, so is vastly different from how it appears in the original Nintendo game. A lot of fun messing with that one, though. And kicking us off was a request from Tyson, Metal Masters, the main theme, and then I threw in a little bit other things from some other songs. Basically, that soundtrack for Metal Masters has like 3 songs, and they're all basically the same, but they all have different kind of beginnings, so that is the only reason why there's any kind of difference in how that normally appears. In the background right now, I have some music from Legend of the Mystical Ninja, and that's because we're moving on to some some Super Nintendo and Genesis music. And hey, I hope this episode sounds all right to y'all, because this is all on the new setup. I got a new laptop, I got a new microphone here, so this is completely all new, so hope it sounds good. But what's going to keep it going? I know I got some tracks that sound good. I got some Earthworm Jim Power, some Mega Turrican, some Axelay and Pulseman. I got a whole bunch of Genesis and Super Nintendo music. Let's keep it going. one of the best games on the Super Nintendo and one of my personal favorite shooters, Axelay from Konami. The song was called Mother, aka Level 3. Before that, Pulseman for the Genesis, Blank Structure, that's a treasure joint. Some of you already talking about Pulseman, Pulseman and Alien Soldier were the two that I kind of got. People gave me shit for, not including on the Genesis Marathon I had last episode. Well, there you go. And before that, before Pulseman, I had Mega Turrican for the Genesis. That's the secret level that appears. If you, I think there's a code you put in, and on the first level, you go down the elevator, it takes you to that level instead. I'm not sure. Before that, a truly baffling and terrible game with an amazing soundtrack, Gym Power Lost Dimension in 3D for the Super Nintendo, The Mutants Forest. And before that, Earthworm Gym Level 5. And you know what? In the background here, we just had it. That was Lightning Force Phantoms, which is a boss. It's boss music. And you know what? This whole next set of songs is the boss rush. All boss music. So I got some requests in here, and I got some stuff that I really, really dig. So you know what? Just boss rush mode. Let's do this. Secret of Mana, the boss music, aka Danger, for the Super Nintendo. Before that, Alien Soldier. Again, everyone wanted to hear some of that in the Genesis Marathon. There you go. The Seventh Force for the Genesis. There's also it's a reprisal of a song heard in another treasure game, Gunstar Heroes. Before that, X-Men 2: The Clone Wars, the Brood Queen and her claws as requested by Troy. Before that, Thunder Force 4, aka Lightning Force, Strikeout, which is the Stage 4 boss, which was sort of requested by Felix. Felix wanted to hear some Lightning Force, and I chose that song instead. Hope you're not too upset, dude. And before that, Rocket Knight Adventures, the boss theme. Also, I threw in the ending theme, or the final boss theme, the very intro to that. So that was one of the songs that I kind of goofed with a little bit here in the studio, quote unquote. All right. After the boss rush mode, I figured we should just like chill out because this is the final stretch. This is the last bit here of this episode, and we're gonna have some fun, upbeat, pause vibes tracks to take us out. Because I want to end this one on a high note because I unfortunately need to announce that I'm taking a break from Retro Beats as well as some other projects because it has occurred to me that the amount of material and the amount of work that I want to release is just not possible with the with what I have on my plate right now currently. So, in order to focus basically on HVGN videos, I'm going to be taking a break from some of the other stuff like Retro Beats and Is It Really That Bad? Shows that were originally made to kind of bridge the gap in between HVGN videos because I was feeling burnt out by them, as now just taken up all of the free time that I have. And so I kind of want to get back to making those reviews. And so probably for the rest of the summer, I will be taking a break from Retro Beats. I don't know when I'll be getting back to it. I just wanted to get a couple of episodes of HVGN under my belt before I jump back to this. But I don't really want to put a specific date on it because I don't know. But I also know that in the past I've just taken long breaks from Retro Beats and then not really said anything. So I'm trying to get ahead of that and actually mention that yes, I am taking a break from Retro Beats. This show is a lot of fun, but it is rather time-consuming, whether or not you are aware of it. I guess if you're not aware of how much time this show really takes, then I must be doing something right. But at any rate, I still enjoy doing this, but I want to get back to making reviews because it's kind of like the thing that I enjoy most, and it seems like that's the thing that the fans enjoy the most. So we're going to take us out. This is going to be the last Retro Beats for a while, once again, and we're going to have some fun, though, before we go on out. Some of the happiest, jauntiest, upbeat, pause vibe songs I could think of from the Super Famicom, Tetris Battle Gaiden. Genial Sunshine is the name of this track we're going to start off with. Then from the Sailor Moon R game for Famicom, Jungle Craze, another Japanese game. After that, a Nintendo game, Adventures in the Magic Kingdom, Space Mountain, Star Tropics for the Nintendo, the Subsea, the Genesis, Monster World 4, the main theme, and then taking us out is Outrun, The Last Wave by the Genesis. And I will see you somewhere down the line. Thank you so much for listening. Check out retrobeats.tumblr.com and spacemoneyoctagon.com. All right, take care.